They've helped solve 132 murders since 2002 and paid tens of thousands in rewards to anonymous tipsters. But it's a time of change for First Coast Crime Stoppers, which is getting only its second executive director in its 22-year history. And he joins me now. Chase Robinson, welcome to First Coast Connect.
I'm glad to be here. Thank you for having me this morning.
Thank you for being here. So, Wyllie Hodges was the original executive director of First Coast Crime Stoppers, and he remained so until his retirement. Well, rather, until he died last year. So, what does it mean to you to fill his shoes?
So, first off, it's an honor to fill his shoes, but also I think it's a chance to carry on his legacy. I was able to work with him for about 2 years and learn what he really wanted Crime Stoppers to be and what he thought Crime Stoppers was capable of. So, I'm really excited to put my own spin on it, but also take his, professional expertise and also his moral values along with it into the future.
So I used to work in TV news.
Mhm.
I mentioned to you, I felt like we were running Crime Stoppers name and
Mhm.
number uh, multiple times every week. But for those who don't know what Crime Stoppers is and what its mission is, explain.
So we are first off, we're a nonprofit organization, and we offer a crime solving and crime prevention programming method. So we offer a way for citizens of the First Coast, specifically in the 6 counties that we cover. It's Nassau, Duval, Clay, Baker, Bradford, and Union counties. So anyone residing in these 6 counties can contact Crime Stoppers regarding anything involving any criminal activity. And when they report that information to us, they remain completely anonymous throughout the entire process, and that's something that we take very seriously and something that we've never compromised in over the 20 years we've been in Jacksonville and the First Coast. So if you know anything about a crime, whether it's something small or something big, if you report that information to Crime Stoppers, you may be eligible to a $3,000 cash reward, up to a $3,000 cash reward. And if that leads to the arrest of someone, you get paid that cash reward. And even picking up that reward is anonymous as well. The whole process, I want to make more transparent, make people aware that they truly are anonymous. And, that anonymity has a meaning behind it. It's not just a long word with a bunch of vowels that people need to understand what that means and why we take so much pride in protecting it.
So you talk about if somebody sees a crime or knows about a crime
Mhm,
that happened, they can call Crime Stoppers. But how do you interface with JSO
mhm.
or another law enforcement agency? At what point are people calling you? What point should they be calling 911?
So if they're first off, if they're witnessing anything happening, live at the moment, they should immediately call 911. That's what we always tell our tipsters that call in that may be seeing a crime happen as they're calling us. Our tips coordinator, she's a wealth of resources for tipsters calling in. But first off, if you're seeing something happen, call 911. But immediately after you contact 911 and get police or EMS dispatched, pick up the phone and call First Coast Crime Stoppers. You can then report that information to us so that if the information that you're saying leads to an arrest and the crime or criminal activity that you're witnessing, you can get paid a cash reward up to $3,000 for that information. But it is important if you are witnessing something to call 911 first.
So, who makes the decision about whether a crime merits an award or
Mhm.
how much that crime reward should be?
So we have a board of directors, a 19-member board of directors, and they determine the types of crimes that we pay rewards for and also the quantity of the reward that is to be paid out. So the more severe the board determines a crime to be, the higher the reward amount will be. So it can range anywhere from $100 to $200 up to $3,000, or if it's an enhanced reward case, upwards of $10,000 to $15,000.
Hmm. And so that's a decision that the board makes. Is that made with input from the state attorney's office, from JSO?
So the biggest input would be the Florida Association of Crime Stoppers. So that's a statewide organization that every Crime Stoppers organization in the state of Florida is a member of. And we have 3 conferences throughout the year. And one of the major points of that is determining the severity of crimes and then what level of reward will be paid out for said crimes.
Hmm. So we are talking to the new executive director of Crime Stoppers, and you are welcome to call with questions or comments. His name is Chase Robinson, and you can reach us on air at 904-549-2937. You can also email firstcoastconnect at wjct.org or reach out on social media. So what kind of accountability is there in terms of the money and the confidential tipsters? You mentioned earlier that anonymity is more than just a big word with a lot of vowels. So, how can you affirm to somebody that their identity is going to be protected if they call or if they come to collect an award?
So first off, I mean, from the very beginning, you decide that information that you have, you think can lead to the arrest of someone involved in a criminal case. Whether you call our toll free hotline at 1-866-845-TIPS that you see broadcast all over the news and um, websites and out there in the media. If you go to our website at fccrimestoppers.com, use our mobile app P3 Tips, or even call our statewide line at star tips. Regardless of which method you use, they each have their own unique way of protecting your anonymity. So, for example, the star tips, that is a phone line that you can pick up your mobile phone and call star tips, and it automatically redirects you to the correct Crime Stoppers agency based off of your cell phone location. And first off, people are going to be like, oh, well, they're tracking me or they're going to know where I am. Well, we actually have partnerships with the major phone companies that instead of being able to track your exact location, they actually only ping the county that you're calling from. So even the location is protected from phone information. If you're calling our hotline, which actually the call center is based in an undisclosed location in Southeast Texas, you're actually protected there. They're trained to not take your personal information. The caller ID is blocked. And the system that they use, our tips coordinator here, is how she coordinates that information to the local law enforcement agencies. She even performs what we call a sanitization method, where any form of indirect identification. So say if someone is submitting tip information about their neighbor and they might put that my neighbor is doing, XYZ, that's an indirect form of identification. So she would put an individual and replace, my neighbor, so people don't accidentally identify themselves. So we take multiple levels of security to ensure that individuals remain anonymous.
And so if somebody makes a tip
Mhm,
and they believe that that crime has been solved because of their
mhm.
tip, how do they follow up? I mean, are they notified, "Hey, you've got this reward waiting for you," or is that on them to find out themselves?
So that's on them. And the reason why is because we don't collect your phone number. We don't collect any personal information. So we have no way to contact you. So the way that we ask tipsters if they've submitted information to Crime Stoppers is to call using our phone number that you're given when you submit your tip information, or go on our website or tip app, and you can message our tips coordinator directly on Tuesdays or Thursdays. And you can say, hey, here is my tip number. Just wanted to check to see if it's led to the arrest of someone. If so, am I eligible for a cash reward? So that's a way that tipsters have to reach back out to us in order to find out the status of their tips. And with that, I mean, last year alone, we set a record paying out $40,000 in rewards just alone. That was an organizational record. And that's only at a 49% pickup rate, too.
Yeah, so talk about that. I'd seen that reported previously.
Hmm.
So there's a huge proportion of people that are
Hmm.
eligible for these rewards
Hmm.
that don't collect it. What do you think is happening there? And is it a priority for you to make that pickup rate better?
So, I mean, that's one of the reasons why I want to create this sense of transparency with Crime Stoppers, so people understand how the program works. And for example, the just alone this year, the roughly $40,000 that's just sitting out there that's been approved. The information has led to the arrest of an individual. It's just waiting for someone to pick it up. I want people to understand, well, how can they get access to their cash reward? What does the pickup process look like? I want there to be a sense of transparency and also a reassurance that their anonymity is secured, even picking up the cash reward at the bank, which, I mean, it's kind of a double-edged sword there. We're not sure if, people are just calling in information to do the right thing because they care about their community, or if maybe they're scared to pick up the reward. But we just want to reinsure individuals that even when you go to the bank to pick up your cash reward, that's secure as well. We partner with Truist, and there's multiple locations around the First Coast. So if you've been approved for a reward and you call our office, you message our office, you're going to get a unique reward pickup ID. You take that to the bank and you actually go through the drive-through tube. And we have partners here at Truist that are actually trained in Crime Stoppers reward payouts. So you go to the drive-through, you can either walk or drive through. You place your reward pickup ID on a little sticky note or piece of paper. You put it in the tube. It goes back to the bank teller because they're trained in Crime Stoppers reward payouts. They then put their approved cash amount in an envelope, send it back down the tube. You're on your way. There's no face-to-face interaction,
They don't
no
require an ID.
no ID, no name, no phone number, nothing. So from the moment you submit a tip until that very end, you're guaranteed anonymity.
So what happens to the unclaimed money? Does it sit there forever? Does it get reinvested?
So so if you're approved for a reward, it sits in a rewards payable account for about 30 days. And once that 30 days is up, it goes into a what we call a 90-day pickup window. So that 90-day pickup window will allow a tipster to call in and say, "Hey, I forgot that my reward to pick up my reward, so I want to, arrange a date and time for me to go by the bank and pick it up." So if it's within that 90 days, it just goes back before our board of directors, they reapprove it, and our tips coordinator can give them the correct information to go to the bank. After that 90 days, it goes back into a pot, and once again, all we have to do is wait for the tipster to reach back out to us. But it's not like if you forget to pick up a reward that was from 3 years ago that money's just gone. It's still in an account waiting for you to just contact Crime Stoppers.
So even I mean, I guess because 'cause I'm thinking some of
Mhm,
these crimes must take years to solve or to
mhm,
resolve. Um, at what point does the money become available?
mhm.
Is that just after an arrest or after an adjudication, like if somebody's actually convicted?
So that's a very good point. So our organization is unique in the fact that we pay our rewards upon arrest, not conviction. So if someone is arrested, a suspect in a case, and that suspect was arrested because of the information that you provided, you are now eligible for that cash reward and would then go through the payout process for said cash reward.
And so how many of the cases that you handle are cases that exist already as
Mhm,
reported crimes and these tips are helping to solve or at least contributing information? And how many of the calls that you receive are initiating an
mhm.
investigation or initiating a complaint of some kind?
So the largest portion of our tips are going to be related to ongoing, criminal investigations. That's what JSO puts out information on. All of our other law enforcement partners, typically cases that they're working on right now, people are submitting information on just because it's made publicly aware or just that's what they're most familiar with. But there's also important cases like cold case homicides. A lot of times we partner with Cold Case Project, and we can get a lot of tips on cold case homicides that may have gone years without being solved, but one random piece of information that someone just finally decided to submit to Crime Stoppers can help solve that case. So it's a mix of everything, but overall it's mostly ongoing cases, and usually it's cases that maybe detectives might not have any more information to go on, and it's that one Crime Stopper tip that just points them in the right direction that leads them to the arrest of a suspect.
If you're just joining us, I'm talking to Chase Robinson. He is the new executive director of First Coast Crime Stoppers. Chase, is there any case in particular that has been like the biggest response
Mhm.
that you've ever received, or a case that just kind of blew up your phone lines with responses for people offering tips?
So I would say there's two cases in the past year that would really ring a bell for that or really highlight the importance of Crime Stoppers. There was a case, I believe it was last year. It was a Derek Pitts case. He was a 16-year-old who was shot and killed at the Cooper's Hawk Apartments on Old St. Augustine Road, and JSO detectives were kind of at a standstill in terms of investigational leads. And immediately, once we put up an enhanced reward for $10,000, going from our $3,000 standard reward to that $10,000, we received 15 tips immediately that day. And JSO really came out and said that, hey, we wouldn't have been able to solve this case without the help of Crime Stoppers. So I think it's really important that people just, any information you have, contact Crime Stoppers because that small amount of information can just point detectives in the right way. And in this case, it was a 16-year-old who was murdered, and we were able to solve the case and bring justice to the family.
So, how motivating is money when it comes to people? I mean, it sounds like
Mhm.
that threshold, increasing that amount of money, was a big trigger for people to decide to actually step in and offer information.
And that is something that we see a good trend on, over the years is typically once a reward is enhanced from our 3,000, it could be up to 8,000, 10,000, whatever it might be. We do see an influx of tips. So there are people that are waiting, to see if a case will be enhanced to submit their information. But also, when we do receive enhanced rewards, we do really incentivize people to not just want to put a bunch of money up for it, in the beginning that we want people to do the right thing, not for money. I mean, the money will be there if they receive, information that leads to an arrest. But I do see a trend in that people are, sometimes waiting back on that enhanced reward to submit their information.
And is there a threshold? I feel like there's some cases where other agencies have maybe chipped in.
Mhm,
I know during the Jared Bridegan case
mhm,
that ATF kind of created its own
mhm.
reward fund. Is that something that you match and mirror? Is that something that always goes through Crime Stoppers, or is the reward sometimes available outside of your agency?
So sometimes there are rewards available outside, but most of the time we're able to work with a lot of local agencies to have the funds go through Crime Stoppers. And the reason why is because if we can make one large pot and make a reward, tens of thousands of dollars. It can, like we mentioned earlier, incentivize people to submit information. So we partner with a lot of different local agencies, JSO, Florida Sheriff's Office, multiple different outlets, um, to enhance rewards, the Florida Sheriff's Association as well. So most of the time it does go through Crime Stoppers, but there are ways for rewards to be paid outside of Crime
And
Stoppers.
is there a max?
No, there's no max. Essentially, it could be as high as organizations or families are willing to put up for the case.
We've got a call from AJ with Mad Dads. Good morning, AJ. Go ahead.
Good morning, Ed. To your guest, I just want to know Crime Stoppers going to do to engage the community more? Are y'all going to get out more than what y'all used to do, and maybe do some community events to get the people re-engaged with Crime Stoppers? A lot of people, especially a lot of people that Mad Dads deal with, don't really know y'all too much except seeing y'all on TV with the police most of the time. Are y'all going to get out and meet, knock on doors, meet people so they can build a trust relationship with y'all?
Good question, AJ. Thank you.
Yeah, most definitely. That's something that I really want to highlight on going forward is putting a face to Crime Stoppers. And like I mentioned earlier, having that sense of transparency and getting out and physically doing community events, walking door to door if that's necessary. I think Crime Stoppers needs to, go back to his roots of a community organization and, of course, keep on pumping out our information on social media, news outlets. But I do agree, yes, we need to get out in the community more and really put faces to our organization and create a sense of trust in First Coast Crime Stoppers.
And what about just advocacy for, reporting crime? We've all talked about and heard much about community resistance, very often for safety reasons, or a distrust of law enforcement, that the desire to or the willingness to speak out when something is, a criminal act is committed, or they know something is limited. How can an agency like Crime Stoppers affect that reality?
I think by hitting on the importance of anonymity and then the different levels that we take to protect that. I think that fear of retaliation is real and that individuals can be scared about, giving information on, I mean, it could be a family member, a close friend, it could be members of their own community. And I think if there's a way or an outlet for people to get that information to a non-law enforcement agency like First Coast Crime Stoppers, that can guarantee their protection and that their identity is never released to the public, the community, I think that is a way to incentivize people to kind of take the safety of their communities into their own hands, essentially, and make their neighborhoods safer again.
Is it frustrating sometimes for law enforcement dealing with Crime Stoppers insofar as you may have somebody offering a tip? They may be the only person that can connect that crime to that perpetrator, and yet you don't have the information to give JSO so that they could follow up on that lead.
I mean, of course, it can be frustrating, especially if there's only one person that knows information, but we can't force people to provide information. But once again, I think it goes back to even what the caller was mentioning on going out in the community and creating that sense of trust in Crime Stoppers. So when that event does happen, individuals will feel capable that they can tell someone, and that Crime Stoppers is that someone that they can tell and that they can feel comfortable doing that. So we can create that sense of community, that sense of trust in one another, because we all have the same goal here. We all want to have a safe community. We all want to work together. So I think if we can all understand that and really take pride in Jacksonville and the First Coast, that's one way that we can do that.
I think people sometimes don't realize how much police require or rely on an account from somebody who can help them put the pieces together, as opposed to just trying to assemble the jigsaw themselves without assistance. So we're on a steep decline for homicides this year in 2023. They're down 40% so far over last year, but still we're on track to have 88 homicides if we stay on that trajectory in 2024. So far, arrests have been made in just 14 of those 88 cases. How many of those do you think could actually be solved or resolved with an arrest if people were speaking out or offering what they know?
So roughly out of per year, the number of homicides that are solved in the First Coast area, about 15% of them come from Crime Stopper tips. So Crime Stopper tips do help with the solving of murder cases. Of course, we want more murder cases to be solved, but I think it comes back to that root case of if we can have a community that can trust in one another, has an organization that they can put their faith in, that we can have that information be brought forward to solve even more cases going forward. Because, I mean, it's wonderful that murder cases are coming down. I mean, that's what we all want, right? We all want a safer community, but they're still happening. There's still cases out there. There's still grieving families, and we can't just neglect those families because the rate's coming down overall. We have to still be that advocate and allow people to submit information if they have it and to feel comfortable doing it.
So tell me a little bit about this move towards
Mhm.
trying to make tips easier to
Mhm.
submit via social media or a mobile phone.
Mhm.
One thing that I thought was really interesting was you can take screen grabs of, maybe something you're seeing on Instagram or a conversation that's happening in real time on a Facebook Live,
Mhm.
and those can be submitted as part of someone's tip through this platform.
Correct, and that's something that our website and our mobile app P3 Tips allows you to do. You can take screenshots of social media handles, anything you're seeing, like you mentioned, on Facebook Live, TikTok, Twitter, anything, because nowadays people post anything on those outlets. So I think having that method of tip submission really allows us to appeal to a new generation of tipsters, and I think that's really vital to keep our program's success, trending upward going forward. And I mean, anything that can support a tips information, like I mentioned, it could be screenshots, it could be audio recordings. The littlest information can lead to the arrest of someone involved in the case. You can put it on that tip. And one unique thing with our mobile app and our website is you can continually add to your tip. You can add information to it. So it's not like once you submit your tip, it's finalized. There's nothing else you can do. So if you're continually going on social media, texting someone, you hear something, you can always put that information back into your tip and update it. And all that updated information will be vetted through our tips coordinator and will be sent to law enforcement. So it could even be that tip update that leads to the arrest rather than the information you originally provided.
I was looking a little bit at your, IRS
Hmm.
filings for the agency. You've got a pretty good sized budget, not a ton of overhead. I mean, you've got
Hmm.
about a half $500,000 a year and, not much in the way of salaries,
Hmm.
but a lot of money going towards advertising.
Hmm.
Is that the chief of expense? Is that, do you think the wisest use of money? Is there any discussion about changing that formula going forward?
So I would say the largest portion of our budget needs to go to advertising. Now, in the past, that has been in the form of static billboards, mobile billboards, bus transit shelters, advertising on the JTA buses themselves, and all those are very important. But I think it just needs to have a revamp or revitalization. I think kind of what I was alluding to earlier was taking that advertising and pushing it towards the new generation of tipsters, and also allowing it to reach every citizen of every corner of the First Coast. And I mean, I know it was the 2020 US Census. I think it's 90% of First Coast residents have access to a smart device, and roughly 90% have access to broadband internet. So if we have ways to reach everyone, I mean, we can kind of break down socioeconomic barriers and really reach everyone, which is something that I want to do. And I think is vital because, we're an organization for all, and we really want to appeal that and break down those barriers and create that sense of transparency.
And we should be clear, that money is not like tax money. It comes from a fund that's created through the criminal justice system and then
Mhm.
also through some law enforcement agencies that kind of fundraise and donate. Is that right?
So our largest source of funding is it's called the Crime Stopper Trust Fund, and that was set up, I believe, in the early 2000s. And the money that is funded in that trust fund actually comes from court fines that are assessed to criminals. So in their, the laundry list of court fines that they receive, one of those is a $20 Crime Stopper fine. And that $20 goes into a state fund, and then at the end of the year, that is then distributed to every Crime Stopper agency in Florida. And depending on the size of the program, different organizations get different levels of money, but that is what we use to pay out our rewards. So essentially, it's, people getting arrested for crimes that are actually funding the arrest of, new criminals. So all that money is actually being put to good use, and it's not taxpayer dollars that we're using.
Well, Chase Robinson, it is very nice to meet you in
Mhm.
person, and I look forward to staying abreast of your work at Crime Stoppers. But thanks for coming by today.
Yeah, very nice meeting you, and I'm glad to be on. Thank you.